Hi, I'm Jeff Vestal. I'm a customer enterprise architect here at Elastic. Today we're going to do a quick run through on setting up the Elastic Open Crawler from the command line, and we're going to crawl the Elastic Search Labs blogs, and we're going to create some embeddings automatically with the semantic text field. So it should be a quick setup, and let's walk through how to do it. So the first thing, let me move my window over to this side. The first thing you're going to need is an Elasticsearch cluster. There's lots of guys out there getting started. You can certainly go to cloud.elastic.co and get a free trial spun up. But we're going to assume you already have some Elasticsearch set up that you can use. Now, I mentioned we're going to use Elastic's newer semantic text field. This is kind of the easy getting started or onboarding road for semantic text, allowing you to ask questions naturally instead of just using keywords. The semantic text field, real quickly, allows you to do automatic chunking. It ties to an inference API to do automatic embedding. And we're going to use the ELSER model, the Elastic Learn Sparse Encoder, and we'll get that all set up real quickly. Now, if you're not doing anything custom, you just want to slam whatever's on the web that the crawler picks up, you don't have to edit the mapping. But the nice thing is you can edit the mapping ahead of time to modify how your data is going to be ingested. So I'm going to hop over to our dev tools. So dev tools, if you're not familiar, is in Kibana. It's the front end essentially of Elasticsearch and allows you to run API calls directly on a cluster. So I already have a Elastic serverless search project running, and we're all set up here. So what I'm going to do is make this API call to underscore index template. I'm going to name it very cleverly Search Labs template. Anything with the index that gets created, search-labs-blogs, will pick up this pattern. Now, as I mentioned, the crawler has a bunch of built-in fields that it automatically names and stores the data that it picks up. So you don't have to do this. One of those fields is called body, which is just the text, the body of the web page that we're going to pick up. In this case, it's the blog article and some other things on the web page. So what we want to do is we want to take that text, that's the blog, and we want to copy it to another semantic text field so we can generate these embeddings with ELSER. So all we do is say we're going to take the body, which is already type text, and we're going to copy it to a field called body underscore semantic. And on line 12, you'll see bodies underscore semantic. It is a type semantic field. And we have this built-in inference ID. If you're running 8.16 or later, it should be built in. If you're running an earlier version, you'll just have to create an inference API, but then you just set it up here. We can look real quick at this inference API, or endpoint rather. You can see that it is tied to a sparse embedding type, and the number of allocations starts at 0 so that you can, if you're not using it, it's not going to use any resources. Again, if you create one yourself, you can configure this setting. But it has adaptive allocations to start at 0 and scale out to, in this case, 32, using 32 vCPUs. And here's our ELSER model. It's the one that's built in. So, the first time you use this, it'll download and auto deploy, and everything's all set up. So it's really nice, easy to get up running. So I'm going to run this, and you got acknowledged. Cool. So our index is set up, or the index pattern. Actually, I'm going to create the index just for kicks. That'll save a little bit of time. Okay, index is set up, cluster's all ready to receive data. Now, you also have to have Docker running. I'm not going to go through setting up Docker, but it needs to be running wherever you're running this, since we're going to run a Docker container. Since the Docker was released as beta, you have an official Docker container you can download. You don't have to build it yourself. So all you do is run this Docker run, and that'll pull down the container and deploy it. So we'll do that. I already downloaded this previously, so that's why it's so fast. Otherwise, it just takes, it's a pretty small download relatively. So it'll be up and running. You can run Docker PS. Cool. So started 13 seconds ago. Great. So configure the crawler. Now, one of the nice things about OpenCrawler is it has lots of configuration options, but a lot of them are default. So if you, again, don't want to tweak everything, you just want to crawl, you don't have to do a whole lot. We're going to use a fairly simple crawler. configuration. So I'm going to crawl elastic.co domain. My seed again is the search labs. My crawl rules, I only want to search the blog, so it has to start with that. And then just in case anything slips through, I'm going to deny everything else because Search Labs links to a lot of other documentation, other sites, so we want to kind of lock it down. Now, one of the newer features, as of this recording anyways, is the ability to do extraction rule sets. This lets you pull data out of the, the code of the web page you're crawling and store that in other fields. In this case, I want to pull out the author just so I can store it in an author field. If I go to one of the blogs that I wrote, you'll see my name is here on the page. If I look at the dev tools, and I know this is probably tiny in the video, sorry, but if you squint, you can see byline underscore author underscore names. And so that's the selector we're going to grab. And then here's my name. So you can copy that, but you can, if there was any other data on your web page that you want to pull out, you just need to find the selector. And so that's what this selector is doing. It's looking for that and joining. And actually, if I look at the real config, I modified it after this. We're also grabbing span. So we're looking for that plus a little span. This is the real config I'm going to use. I'm going to store it as an array. Again, the output's going to go to Elasticsearch. The output index is Search Labs blogs. Here's some other settings I have. Just disable discovery. I know what I want. I don't want to just randomly crawl everything. Now, I'm going to specify my host name and API key. I'm going to clear those up after this blog, so they will not be live by the time you watch this. So what we need to do, if I go back to my little doc that I wrote here, we're going to copy that config file into the container or the Docker image container. We're going to start the crawl job and run this. Now, if you're using the out-of-the-box inference endpoint that I showed earlier, what you'll notice is when it gets started, you might have some timeout errors. This is just as Elasticsearch scales the Elster deployment from 0 to, in this case, potentially 32 vCPUs or whatever want to use. It might take a couple seconds. So if you see some timeouts at the beginning, that's kind of be expected in this scenario. So I'm going to let this run for a couple minutes, and then I'll come back and we'll check it out. All right, so that took 3 minutes, 44 seconds. Not too bad. Yeah, let's take a look at what we have. So if I hop back over to Discover, let me get rid of this quick. So what we're going to do is use a retriever, a standard retriever with a semantic query. Semantic query uses that queries that search semantic text field, regardless if it's dense or sparse, and we allow it to ask a question naturally. So how to quantize vectors, something you can do in Elastic. We'll see what we got. So first one's about scalar quantization. It's a good one. See out there. Now, you'll notice there's a couple of dupes in here. This is something where if you want to clean up the field, you could use an ingest processor or ingest pipeline to perhaps just take the first item in the author array. Kind of just quick demo, so not too much. One thing I'll show you, again, it chunks it and we generate embedding. So we did get what we wanted. Let me clean this up just real quick. False and fields. We'll just look for, since we already saw we got author, we'll just look at the titles. Again, you're able to ask questions naturally. Here's a scalar quantization. But, in a typical search scenario, you're going to return either the chunk, or oftentimes for like a blog, you might just want the whole blog article returned, since they're not too long usually. So you can ask the question naturally, and now you have tutorials on how to scalar quantization. What's this one on? Better binary quantization using RabbitQ, which is our better binary quantization, BPQ. Great stuff. So hopefully this was helpful. You saw how we were quickly able to configure the mapping to meet our needs. We're able to download the crawler from Docker using the Docker image, do a pretty simple configuration, crawl some data, and we got the data into Elastic, and now we can move on and do what we want. So hopefully that was helpful. There's a blog about the Open Crawler beta that was out in September. It's still interesting. The and GitHub/elastic/crawler is where the repo is. Information about the crawler in here is where you pull down all the information. So a lot more info in there. There's also config examples with all the more advanced options. So hope this is helpful. Talk to you later. Bye.